So today we are going to discuss one important concept which is client server architecture. So the next topics will be related to HLD only. Then after getting a good command of HLD topics, we will go with the basics HLD concepts. So now we are covering the basics of HLD. Okay, sorry, my bad. So what is a client server architecture? So basically, a system design model where there are two components, one is client and another one is server, and okay, and the client which request data or services, okay, and server, it processes the request asked by client and then send the response. Okay, so it mostly happens in the web development or some product based services. Okay, so what happened basically, uh, there is a two term, HTTP and HTTPS. These are basically network communication protocol. Okay, so it's stand for hypertext transfer protocol and hypertext transfer protocol secured or safety, not sure. So like this is the most safest version. So basically what happens, there is client and there is server, and like between client and server, client is sending some requests and then server is processing the request and sending the response back. So this communication happens under the HTTP or HTTPS protocol. Okay, so this is the client server architecture in the upper view. Okay, now we're going to cover many internal components. Like between the client and server, there are multiple components. Okay, so we are going to discuss all the core components. So the next topic is core components of client server architecture. Okay, so we are having client, which is our front end. Examples are like UI layer, maybe in mobile, like through some app or maybe some browser. Okay, and basically what happens, this clients, it sends request through APIs. Okay, and home it send the request through the backend. Okay, so examples I already told you. The next component is server. Server means backend. What basically backend does, it handles the business logic, like what we are implementing. In the UI we just show the like design and other things. Actually it it being handled in the backend only. So yeah, so handles business logic. If you are making some AI tool, so the actual AI implementation will happen in the backend only, not in the front end. Then what happens next? It processes the request. For an example, if you are using Chat GPT, so what we send on the UI, what we send the PDF. Let's say we are asking ki go through this PDF and prepare a PPT for me. So whatever we are sending the file or PDF, based upon that the server will process the request and then send us the response back like the PPT. Okay, so it depends on the UI as well and the processing as well. So it will return the response. Okay, so this is the next, the example, like you can take API server or web server. Okay, so types of server, we are having three types. The first one is like web server, like for the web static content. Then we're having application server. Sometimes we also have database server. Okay, the third one is API server, and sometimes database server as well. Okay, now change the color. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, so the next is network. Okay, so network is medium for communication. As we mentioned earlier that here is client and here is server, so in between these there is communication. So communication is like we are sending request, getting back the response, but the medium is network. So this entire medium, we called it network. Okay, it can be HTTP, HTTPS, or some other TCP, IP as well. So protocols which we generally have in the network, like the most used, there are multiples. So the first one is like HTTP, then HTTPS, then we're having TCP, and then we're having IP. Okay, so yeah, these we're using. And the next one is database. Okay, so database, basically we store data, and there are two types of database. One is SQL, another is non-SQL. In the SQL we're having relational, like table type of format, and in the non-SQL we're having document type. So in the SQL we're having PostgreSQL, MySQL, and in the NoSQL we're having MongoDB or Redis. Okay, now let's cover the new topic, basic flow, like how it happens. There is lot to discuss in this client server architecture, like although it's not so tough, but yeah, it plays a big role in the designing of high level. Okay, so yeah, we need a good command over this, so I will practice some Instagram login example as well, but yeah, later on. So we can have some steps. Basically, first step is client send the request. Okay, then server receive the request. Now what happened, when server received the request, it validates and the start processing. Okay, once it get processed, server may query database. Suppose that I'm doing the login thing, so for the login, whatever username or password I've entered, the server will go to database and match. Okay, so in sometimes, like, it's not always true, server will query the database, okay, if needed. Then the next is server will send the response. Okay, and then client will receive the response and it will render a result. So client renders result. Okay, so this is the basic flow we are having for like normal one. Okay, so let's take an example. Example is like Instagram login. Okay, we will take some examples. So example one, because it's very important in terms of designing. Okay, so that's why I'm giving so much time on this topic. So for example one is Instagram. Okay, so first step is that we're having this client UI. Okay, UI for Instagram, and we are having two forms. You have to enter username and you have to enter password. Okay, so the moment the user enters this username and password, then we click on this login button. Okay, after I will just try it. Sorry, it's not visible. We'll just okay, so now login. Okay, so the moment it will click on the login button, now what will happen, it will go to the server will validate the user, it will take the username and password credentials, and then it will go to database and it will check the database. If database says that yeah, database will again get back to server and it will say yeah, the user is already correct, and like he is valid user. Okay, then server will again go and it will generate success plus JWT token. Then basically this JWT token will be sent back to the UI, and for the further sessions and for the authentication, the client will store the JWT token. So basically what happened, we first come to the UI, the client page. The client page we send some response. The response was to login. Then it went to the server. Server first validate. Then it processed. In the processing means it went to database and it checked whether the user is already there or not. If the username matches, and then it will match the password. If the password is also matching, it will basically say yeah, the user is already there, success, and it will generate a JWT token. Now, what will happen? This JWT token will be sent back to the UI to store for the further authorizations, and the UI will allow him to log in. Okay, so this is an example one. Now let's take another example. Another example is Netflix video streaming. Okay, so basically what happens, like let's see, this is the Netflix UI, and we're having multiple videos like video 1, video 2, and like keep on. Okay, so the user will click on this video 1. Okay, I will click on this. Then what will happen? It will ask for the authorizations. If I'm login, it will directly ask. If I'm not being logged in, so it will send to me the login interface. And again, after the moment I will enter the like username, password, then again that example of Instagram login will like occur again. So I'm not going to discuss the same thing. Okay, so if I'm being authenticated, then what will happen? It will match the data, and then it will have the CDN video streaming. Okay, and then it will start showing on my screen. Okay, so what is CDN, and like what is microservice and other things? So like we will discuss later on, because these are like some important terms. Okay, so we will discuss these terms later on. Again taking another example. Okay, the last example for this case. Example 3 is Amazon order placement. So basically, we go to the UI and we choose an item, and then we add to cart. Then we place the order. So basically, what happens in this entire process, like when we search add to cart, the inventory check is being happened in the server. So when we add to cart and then we place the order, what happens after this? The server will validate the inventory, whether it is possible or not. Then post like confirmation ki yeah, we are having. It will ask for the payment. Okay, so server will get the response for the placing the order. Then it will check inventory. If it's there, then it will process the payment, and if it's able to find the payment things, it will update the database. Yeah, the user is ordering this, and we have to confirm that. Okay, so after, it will send the UI response as order placed. Okay, so like this is happening, and there are multiple servers. There are not only one servers. We're having in this case we're having three servers. One is like payment server, then we're having inventory server, then we're having order server. Okay, so all these three servers are working simultaneously, or maybe one after another. Okay, so it depends on the user case. Okay, so by these three examples we get the brief idea, and like how the actual terms on the upper view, on the upper level works. Okay, now the next topic is types of this client server architecture. Okay, it plays an important role in the terms of stability. We were discussing microservice and CDN earlier, so in this we are going to discuss all these on the upper level. Okay, so first one is monolithic. Monolithic means only one server will handle everything, right? Now, like early web app is an example of this. The next is two-tier architecture. In this, what happens? We are having client, then we are having server, then we are having database. Okay, and simple apps, the simple UI app, and like the Amazon वगैरह I we actually make. Okay. Okay, the third one is three tier. Okay, sorry, my bad. Okay, three tier architecture. So in nowadays web development, we are generally following this, and in this, what is like the architecture structure, that is client, then application, server, then database. Okay, then we are having some other new types, which is like n tier or microservice. In this, what we do, like Google is having multiple services, so instead of using one Google service, it breaks down in the YouTube Drive, play movies, play games, etc. Okay, or like some other Meta is having new features, like having Instagram, having WhatsApp. So yeah, and within that app it is having multiple microservices. So microservices like multiple independent services. Okay, and the best thing, the best advantage for this is that even if one system fails, one microservice fails, the other keeps on working and it will have the high fault tolerance. Okay, so multiple independent services. Okay, so this is like the types of client server architecture, and now we are having some concepts for the architecture which is left. First is like stateless versus stateful. So basically, stateless means I will say REST API, and each request is independent. Okay, so I will just write each request independent. On the other hand, for the stateful, we are having server storage. So basically, our server stores the session. The next is like scalability, which we already discussed, and we also discussed horizontal scaling and like load balancings. Then we are having latency, which we already discussed. Then security, for the security purpose we use HTTPS and authentication like JWT and auth. So like these are not so much important terms. So like this all, we're having some problems faced. Okay, in client server architecture, and we try to make the system very robust and free from these shortcomings. So the first is server overload. It's self-explanatory what is happening. Then we're having DB slow queries. Basically, our DB is not processing data too faster rates. Third one is network latency. It is taking some time to like coming to our system, or overall time of the service increased. Okay, then single point of failure, and the solution is that for the overloading we are having load balancing. Load balancing means let's say we are having Netflix, and thousands of people are using Netflix. So now what happens, the server will not being loaded. So when I search for a term, there is having multiple servers like having the same data and working on the same latency. So it will randomly go and it will check which server is not loaded right now, and it will give my response to my request to that server only. So basically, getting like load on only one server, instead it goes to like all servers and find. Basically, it's like operating system thing type of things. Okay, we'll discuss more in the load balancing like later on videos. The For this DB slow queries, we can have caching, which is generally in the Redis database. Okay, then we can have, for the network latency, we can have a replication, which we already discussed in last video, like creating copies of all this. And the last is auto scaling, that even if it's failed, it will keep on like improving it. Okay, so yeah, these are some terms. So like overall, what is a client, what users see, what is server, it is the brain of system, and what is database, it is the memory. Okay, so yeah, all this is all for the client server architecture. I'm betting that no one has explained in this much depth for this actually client server architecture. And yeah, I will go to depth of every topic. Yeah, so thanks. Bye bye.